Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron. It is the match reaction. Arsenal 2, Everton 1 at the Emirates yesterday. Apologies that this video is about 24 hours late. I spent the majority of yesterday painting and managed to sit down and catch the match, but the second it finished I was right back on the paintbrush to get the kitchen finished off. So I didn't really have enough time to do this yesterday. By the time I'd finished and got a shower and stuff, it was literally eat me tea and go to bed and get up for work today. So I apologise about that one. Unfortunately, Everton and Sean Dyche end the season with a defeat, our first defeat since that huge loss against Chelsea all that time ago. Who'd have thought after that game that Everton wouldn't lose another game of football until the final day of the season against Arsenal? And in fact, a game that we didn't really deserve to lose. Now look, the game pretty much played out exactly how I think the majority of us would have expected it to. Arsenal with the attacking side, Arsenal with a team with something to play for, and even though Manchester City had pretty much confirmed their 4th Premier League title in a row within the opening couple of minutes of their game, there was still something to play for Arsenal, and there's still always that chance. You never know. If you get the job done and you do all as you can do, you never know what could happen with other teams. So Arsenal's objective and goal was always to go out there, not only to finish the season strong, but of course, you know, to potentially come away from the season with the Premier League trophy, however unlikely that was. They still had an opportunity to do that yesterday. So they were the attacking side. They were the team getting forward. It was a very much you know, sort of feet on the plane, flip-flops on attitude, I think, from Everton again. It was a pretty much a performance that we've seen, you know, over the last couple of weeks or so. Nothing to play for, absolutely no reason or need to go out and win the game other than to end the season strongly. And I suppose we did that against Sheffield United. We were unlucky against Luton as well, but I don't think many of us had hopes that Everton would come out of this game with a positive result. And to be fair, I was quite pleasantly surprised because we performed better than what I expected. I thought the game plan was fairly spot on by the manager. I thought players like Dominic Calvert-Lewin played well. Idrissa Gana Gueye again, obviously getting the goal, put a good performance in. And the game plan was obviously to frustrate Arsenal. It was to defend well, you know, keep a strong defensive back line and then hit them on the counter-attack if possible. And we managed to do that. We managed to do that in the opening 45 minutes, get ahead on the score sheet. And unfortunately for us, Arsenal were able to come back into it pretty quickly. But I remember when they scored the equaliser, I remember sitting there watching thinking, is this going to be the moment now where they go and get a second, they go and get a third, they go and get a fourth? But it wasn't like that whatsoever. Everton settled down really well in the game, defended really well. Arsenal had their moments. Look, they hit the post, they hit the bar, they had numerous opportunities, much more opportunities than we had. But you expect that, you would have expected that. Even if there wasn't anything on the line for Arsenal, you would have expected that if Everton had had something on the line. The fact that Everton have turned up there on the final day of the season with absolutely nothing to play for whatsoever, we couldn't have finished any higher. We obviously were safe in terms of relegation. Arsenal, of course, had the league to play for still at that point. So even had it have not been that case, you would have still expected Arsenal to have had the more of the ball, to have had the more of the chances, to have pushed us more, and that's exactly what happened. But I thought Everton dealt with the majority of it really, really well. I thought defensively we were really solid throughout the game. Tarkowski, Branthwaite, really, really solid for pretty much the entirety of it. I thought Ashley Young was a little bit touch and go, but you know, that's what you get when you're playing a 38-year-old fella at right back. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We can debate whether or not Ashley Young should be at Everton Football Club, but there is absolutely no debate as to whether he should be starting games of football for Everton. He shouldn't be anywhere near a starting 11 for Everton. You know, I appreciate he probably brings qualities off the pitch in terms of leadership, in terms of that little bit of grit, that little bit of experience, but he makes far too many mistakes on the pitch, and he showed that time and time again this season. But other than that, generally, as I said, I thought we done well. I thought Seamus done well. I thought the midfield held themselves. And look, Arsenal were always knocking, weren't they? The fans were up for it, especially when they found out that West Ham had got one back. Someone also spread the rumour, I think, that West Ham had got two back, which gave them a little bit of a false sense of hope. But nevertheless, they were still up for it. They were in, you know, good mood, you know, good feeling for them. Ultimately, you know, a feeling of disappointment, but I think an immense amount of pride for their team and their manager and those players to have pushed Manchester City to the absolute depths of the season. And you could see that, you could feel that. I thought every Evertonian in the ground was having a good time. You know, again, I remember when we played them a couple of years ago after we'd stayed up against Palace, and we lost much more convincingly on that day than we did yesterday. And the Evertonians still were having a great day because we had nothing to play for. We were safe, and it was effectively a day out at that point. And I think that was a little bit what it was like yesterday, albeit I thought the performance was much better yesterday than that one a couple of years ago. And I thought we were well in the game up until right at the end. And ultimately, Arsenal have won the game with an absolutely horrific refereeing decision once again, and I try not to get too angry at this decision because A, the season is over and it ultimately means nothing. You know, ultimately Arsenal haven't won the league and Everton was safe going into the game anyway, so the game didn't mean anything for us. We couldn't have finished any higher, and like I said, you know, ultimately Arsenal have not won the league, so it's not like it's meant much of a difference in terms of the outcome. But it just absolutely baffles me how decisions like that can be given and goals like that can be given, and then it's almost brushed over as if nothing's happened. Now, Ali McCoist, fair play to him, he did say on commentary that it shouldn't have been a goal and it should have been disallowed, but it was never mentioned again. It was never mentioned again. You know, when the coverage went back to TNT at the end of the game, it wasn't mentioned. You know, when I was listening to other broadcasters talking about the Premier League title race and the final day of the season, it wasn't mentioned. Listening to journalists and you know, people on social media, it just seems to have been glossed over. And yes, the game meant very little, and yes, the goal ultimately in itself meant very little in terms of the title race, but the fact that a referee has been so blatantly biased and so blatantly corrupt in front of everybody's eyes and being able to get away with it is just beyond me. I just don't understand how anybody enjoys this sport and enjoys this league. It is the worst league in the world, and for me, this league needs to be absolutely decimated now. It needs to be destroyed, it needs to be ripped to pieces, and they need to start again. There needs to be a brand new league, not called the Premier League, where every single club has equal amount of say and every single club is treated equally. Because people can come to me with this nonsense that, well, all Premier League clubs get a vote, you know, all Premier League clubs have a say, so blah 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 blah. Yeah, that's absolutely right, all Premier League clubs do have a say, but if you're telling me that every single Premier League club is treated equally and that 6 teams at the top of the pile who make the most money aren't treated differently to the others, then you're absolutely idiotic, and you really need to take a look at yourself in the mirror, because you're being brainwashed. You're being absolutely brainwashed. Once again yesterday, that referee has looked at that monitor 7 times and still given that goal. 7 times. Don't come to me with you, it's just incompetence, they're just not very good. The level of refereeing, it's nothing to do with corruption. The referees just aren't great. That's absolutely fine if he gives that in real time. And then you look back on it and go, that's a blatant handball, that's poor refereeing. He's watched that 7 times on the screen afterwards. It's not incompetence, it's not bad refereeing, it's complete corruption and bias. And as I said, this will never end, and it will only get worse until that Premier League is decimated. It's done now for me, the Premier League. It should cease to exist, and in my opinion, in the next 10 years, it will cease to exist. And there'll be a new league with fairer rules where everybody is treated equally. And if Newcastle want to go and spend £200 million this summer to improve their squad, they can. If Aston Villa want to go and spend £100 million to give them a better chance of staying in the Champions League, they can, without the need of selling Ollie Watkins or without the need to decimate their squad in order to rebuild. They should be allowed to just go and rebuild, because you know, teams like Manchester United, whose stadium is like a fucking water feature in B&Q, but yet will still be allowed to go and spend £1 billion this summer, will still be allowed to sack another manager and pay hundreds of millions for a new one to come in, despite the fact that their stadium is on its arse, despite the fact that if that was a stadium of an Everton or a Sheffield United or a Bournemouth, a Burnley, a Brighton, we would have been fined and given point deductions for the stadium being in that state. But because it's Manchester United, it's allowed to continue. Until This league is destroyed, and people like Richard Masters are bounced and not given another job in football ever again. We will continue to see nonsense decisions and nonsense situations like this. The worst refereeing decision I've seen all season by a country mile. He's watched it 7 times on the monitor and still given the goal, despite the fact that Jesus not only handballs it, he moves his arm towards it to create the opportunity for himself, and that somehow is still not handball. But we know Michael Oliver is a complete clown. He's an idiot. He shouldn't be anywhere near a football pitch. I don't know how he looks himself in the mirror of a morning and manages to go out to work, because he's an embarrassment. He's an absolute embarrassment. But we've known that for years and years and years. Ultimately, I think this was a fitting end to this Premier League season. This has been the worst Premier League season in the history of the competition, not just from an Everton point of view, not just from an Everton standpoint, not just because we've had a couple of point deductions and we've struggled, but in terms of the refereeing decisions, points deductions being given out to certain teams, yet other teams are allowed to sell their own assets to themselves to bypass FFP. It's been a calamity, and as I said before, this season should now see the end of the Premier League, in my opinion, and the beginning of something new, fairer, where everybody has got a chance to compete, because I'm getting really, really bored of this same old, well, it's only them teams we want in the top sort of 5 or 6, and if it's not them teams, then we're going to shiv everybody else to make sure that they get up there. It's nonsense now, and it's not enjoyable. And as I said, it was a fitting end to the season that it ended with a horrific, biased, corrupt refereeing decision, because that's been the story of this whole season, hasn't it? But look, ultimately, I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of the team. I'm proud of the players. I'm proud of the manager. They stuck through it. Listen, I give him a lot of stick, and I know I'm going to get comments saying, you wanted them sacked, Cam. Yeah, I did, because when you go 4 months without a Premier League win, that's sackable form. But fair play to him. He's turned it round. He's done whatever he's done. You know, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about the effects of the tracksuit and what that actually means going forward. He's done what he's done. He's turned it round, and he managed to get us into a position where we should be, you know, bordering on the top 10 of the league if it wasn't for corruption. But, you know, even without even with the points deduction, we were still comfortably safe on the final day, and those Evertonians were able to go down to London with a smile on their face and just enjoy the day out, as opposed to being stressed and anxious and worried about what the outcome of games are going to be. So, yeah, proud of the players, proud of the manager. Where we go from here, who knows? The priority number 1 for me is getting Farhad Bashiri out of this football club, getting some new owners in, getting some structure to the football club, and then having a plan, a contingency plan going forward, not just going into next season thinking we'll wing it again, because you can only do that a certain amount of times before you drop. So there you go. It's been a hard roller coaster of a season, the worst I've ever experienced in my life. It's taken so much out of me. I'm so glad it's over, and I'm so glad Everton, you know, have managed to get through all the adversity, stick a big 2 fingers up to the Premier League and say, fuck you, you horrible, corrupt clowns. We aren't going anywhere. And yeah, that gives me great pleasure to be able to say that. So there you go. We will be back a little bit later on this week with the podcast. We're going to talk about this game, and we're going to give our overall player ratings for the entire season. And then within the next few days or so, we'll have a season review up, and we'll have lots more content throughout the summer as well. Big thank you for all your support this season. I am aware that the channel has changed quite a bit over the course of the last few months, but unfortunately, like I've just said, that's the effects on how bad this season has been for me. But we're still here, we're still going, we're still pushing content out. So big thank you all for supporting. Big thank you all for all of the kind words and messages as well. Everton are going nowhere. Up the fucking toffees. Fuck the Premier League. Big thank you all for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you after.